Welcome to part 4 of my reading and reflection on Forrest Landry's book, Immanent Metaphysics. In this episode, in this part 4, I read page 4 of the book and give my reflections on it. Enjoy! The nature of metaphysics. Metaphysics is an inquiry into the nature of the relation between self and reality. Metaphysics is organized thinking that attempts or purports to describe the common aspects of the relations between self and reality. The basic questions of metaphysics include: what is the nature of existence, creation, and interaction? What is the nature of the known, the knower, and of knowing, or between the known, the unknown, and the unknowable? What is the nature of causality, of choice, and of change? What is the nature of the personal, self, soul, mind, spirit, that which is subjective, and of the impersonal, world, substance, body, physical reality, that which is objective? And what is the nature of the relation or interaction between them? What is the nature and basis of value, purpose, and meaning? Physics is organized thinking that attempts or purports to explain the common correlated content of the perceptions of many selves in the context of a particular physical world. Metaphysics is not a physics. Each has its own means, ends, and values. Although metaphysics is often considered as an extension of physics, it is more correct to assert that physics is a particular instance of a more general metaphysics. Physics, explanations, is an answer to a why question. Technology, prediction, is an answer to a how question. Metaphysics is an answer to a what question. Physics and technology, when combined together as per the scientific method, refer to a collection of theories and are thus subject to falsifiability and disproof. Metaphysics, as a description of the nature of meaning, measurement, and interaction, is not a theory, is not scientific, and is not falsifiable in the conventional sense of these terms. A description and/or metaphor is evaluated on the basis of significance, completeness, and relevance, rather than on the basis of a fixed procedure or methodology, i.e., a form of logic. A true metaphysics makes no predictions and provides no explanations. It is merely a description of the foundation of being in terms of patterns of correlations of meaningfulness. It is a system of metaphors and definitions. Awesome! Now I invite you to press pause so that you may reflect on what I've just read. And then after you've had your moment of reflection, you can press play and to hear my reflection. I really liked the way Forrest Landry described or defined metaphysics in contrast with physics. I find it really helpful because there was a time in my life where my thought was going along the lines that if I really wanted to educate myself on the fundamental of things, then physics is the way to go. But now, as I got older, I'm more inclined to start with metaphysics first, because to me it's a deeper question. So, in what we just heard, or when I read this page 4 of the book, it described metaphysics as an inquiry into the nature of the relation between self and reality. So, what is interesting is, what is self? What is reality? Those are really very fundamental questions. But even more interesting is that it is not about reality, or just self. It is about the relation between them. So the relation between self and reality. This echoes very much with the work I'm doing with Nora Bateson in the Warm Data Lab um, work that we're doing, where it's really about relations, relating, and how, when my experience of that is when I'm less focused on the things, but more on the relationship between the things. It's a much richer way of being for me, and also a much richer way of interacting with people. And similarly, with the warm data work I'm doing, there is a rigor, and here as well in Forrest Landry's descriptions is that metaphysics is organized thinking, physics is also organized thinking. So both of them have rigor. It's just that they have a different, they're looking at different things. Another one of my less formed thoughts earlier when I was young is that metaphysics is more woo-woo. It's more less rigorous. Having gone through the book of Forrest Landry's book, there is much rigor in it, and the way he's doing it is actually defining each term that he's using and then building up from that. So when he said that it's metaphysics is an organized thinking that attempts to describe the common aspects of the relations between self and reality. It's I find interesting that it's really keeping the link between the subjective and objective. And yeah, the personal and the impersonal. Because a lot of the debates that I've been hearing in podcasts and that the underlying fundamentals seem to be that some people are saying that everything is subjective. Like when I was diving more into the what we used to call the Eastern traditions, the more meditative traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, it's everything's in the mind, everything's consciousness. So it's tending more towards saying that everything is subjective. And I contrast that with some atheist, scientific, more physics-based people, or materialists really at the end of the day, where everything's matter, everything's and the consciousness or the subjective point of view just arises as an emergence of the configurations of atoms, molecules, and physical matter. So they're trying to cut the cord between the two, but with metaphysics as conceived by Forrest Landry, it's not about that. It's about the relationship between the two. And really deep questions like what is existence? What does it mean to exist? What is creation? What does it mean to for something to be created? And what is interaction? What is the known, the knower and knowing? The known, the unknown and unknowable. It's quite interesting because some physicists I have heard talk about there's a way of knowing everything. Eventually we'll know it. And in fact, this has been explored in the TV series I watch called Devs, where they found a quantum computer that can actually compute what will happen and what has happened because it knows the location of every particle and the premise of that is once you do that you can just run the formula forward and backward. And of course it also chose that particular TV series kind of went with the multiverse models of quantum physics, where every time quantum state decoheres, the universe splits into the how many ever branches are involved in that decoherence. Yeah, so with metaphysics, there is at least here in the metaphysics we're discussing here, there is room, there is a space for the unknowable, even if you have all the computing capacity ever. There's still things that are unknowable. and and also I like the way, yeah, if you really come into it, physics, I used to think that physics is how you describe the ultimate reality, but really I can't agree more with this description, where it's really what is, yeah, the common correlated content of the perceptions of many selves. So in a way, physics is a way of measuring signals from events or objects that are observable, and then we compare, like if I measure, like we combine it with technology, which is the how of things. So for example, if I set up a vacuum here in Sydney, and then inside that vacuum I drop two things, and then I measure how long those two things fall when I drop it from the top to the bottom, and then someone else in Chicago and someone else in Hawaii or someone else in Papua New Guinea will do the same setup, and then they measure the time that it took for the objects to fall, and then we compare, and then we say, oh, it's 6.8 seconds or feet per second. And then we correlate. Oh yeah, I saw the same thing. I saw the same thing. Yeah, and that is physics in a way. So it's really acknowledging that in the field of physics there's someone, or there are selves, multiple someones, that decide what to measure and how to measure it, and then what they see based on what they measure. So in a way, in a less rigorous way of saying, or just in my own words, there's subjectivity in the objectivity, because if someone measuring that was not a hominid like humans, the measurements might not be the same. And also, if I'm on in a different planet, the physics will be different in terms of the forces, at least in terms of the gravity that's there. It will be different from here on Earth. So everything will work differently. And I think we're starting to see that as now that we have enough computing power and technology to simulate different worlds in games and in virtual reality and the like. So we're beginning to experiment. Yeah, I've been dabbling with Houdini, which I should actually reminds me to continue, where there you can put physics on the objects and to create the effects that you want, the visual effects that the person using the software wants to achieve is by entering formulas of physics. So this page 4 is just really an introduction, and and the key takeaway that's easy to remember is that physics is a why question. Why does the apple fall from the tree? Because there's a force called gravity that exists between two, the earth and the apple. The earth pulls on the apple. Technology is a how question. And then, so how do we measure that? Like what I described before. But then metaphysics is a what question. What is real? What is that we're measuring? What is measurement? Who is the measuring, and what's the relationship the measurer to the measured? Yeah, and a key purpose as well in terms of metaphysics is one of the last listed question in this page is what is the nature and basis of value, purpose, and meaning. So what does it mean to value something? What is its nature, and what's the basis? Yeah, so these are really deep questions which will be explored as we go along in the book. But for now, it's really a good foundation. That's why I've decided to start um, exploring this book as a basis for the kind of new university that I'm giving birth to called Lim University. And I would like to start with metaphysics as a primary framework for anyone wishing to join me in this co-learning, co-design platform that I'm creating. Yeah, 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 and it's also interesting that when he says a true metaphysics makes no predictions and provide no explanations, and I think that's where some of the confusion happens when some people who purport to do metaphysics make predictions and try to explain that everything happens for a reason and the reason is this, and yeah, that's not true metaphysics. A real metaphysics just describes the foundations of patterns and correlations of meaningfulness. It's a system of metaphors and definitions. And this reminds me of my current interest as well into more Aboriginal or indigenous way of thinking and being and epistemology, where it's really about patterns. And it's a lot of metaphors and definitions. Like here, right now, I'm recording this on the land of the Kamaraigal here in Artarmon, now called Artarmon, and because of the COVID pandemic, I've been walking a lot of the land around my area, and I've been reading some things about the stories of the indigenous people and like the rainbow serpent, and I actually saw this pattern in the rocks in some of the places I've seen here and also in the Central Coast and in the Blue Mountains. That is the way a certain rock formation is. It does feel, look, I sense it like a serpent that winds through the landscape. But beyond that, there's also the feeling of the ancientness of these formations. And if I really put my whole being into it, it communicates with me, it changes. Like I walk almost every day, and the rock faces, the lichens on them, the color of the lichens change depending on, did it rain yesterday? Depends on the time of day, how the light hits the rock face. And then I look in that, and then if I look in a way full of awareness, it hits me, this signal from this perception of the rock face, and then it enters my body of knowing, and then it affects me. It prods me to think about what I want to do in life. It sometimes it makes me want to move a certain way, feeling that it makes me want to make sounds in a different way, walk a different path. So it's this interrelating, the trans contextual relating, where yes, there are boundaries, there are edges to things, but it is in these edges where I learn a lot. And the edges are fuzzy. I just came from spending the New Year's welcoming 2021 in the Blue Mountains, and it just rained. And I realized that walking in a mountain, in a forest, it has a lot to do with sound, not just the visuals. As I was walking, I was enveloped in the different sounds of the forest, and and I noticed that I use sound to navigate as well. When I hear a certain bird make a sound, I can somehow echolocate, so that tells me how to turn my head, so I have a better chance of seeing it. And there's also a lot of way of making sense of things, sensing things with sound. Like I saw my first I've seen my first viewing of a black cockatoo. But yeah, the visuals are very stunning, but also the sound the black cockatoo makes is so different from cockatoos and other birds. It's really haunting. Reminds me of a past life back in the days where we had megafauna. Yeah. So yeah, so the story I just told you, or the description of what I did there, can be more rigorously unpacked using metaphysics, not just physics. Because if it's just physics, it's just like, did I measure the sound wave, the light waves and stuff? And that is why I'm so keen to continue in this. So, yep, that is my reflection on page 4 of Immanent Metaphysics by Forrest Landry. And tomorrow we'll do page 5. And feel free to message me in whatever way or form that we have now, the multiple ways of interacting online. If you want to participate in this, maybe I could do a group reflection later after I finish this run through, because this is like a, yeah, we can have a metaphysics circle if you want over Zoom. Let me know. All right. Cheers.